Do you get worried about climbing in front of other people? I know I sometimes do, and lots of people that I've worked with also get worried about how well they're climbing in front of other people. And sometimes it's fine if you're with your friends or people you trust, but maybe there's other people around where actually you feel like it would be really bad if you didn't climb to your best ability. And what impact does that then have on your climbing? Do you play it safe and just do the stuff you know you can do? Or do you like throw the boat, really push the boat out too far and end up trying things that are way too hard for you and then coming unstuck? I guess social worries in climbing are really common. And in the book that I've just released, I've devoted a whole chapter to it because I think it's a really important subject and it's one that's not covered very often. So, sometimes the worries are about, let me see, I don't know, just going into a climbing wall or going to a crag where there's a lot of people and climbing in front of people. Sometimes it's things like worrying about taking too long on a problem and holding everyone up, or some kind of ideas around that. Sometimes it's about maybe pushing in and taking a turn, particularly if you're a boulderer, I think, and feeling like you have the right to sort of step in front of other people. Sometimes it can be worries about what people are actually thinking about you when you're climbing, and maybe rather than focusing on what you're doing, you're worried about what your belayer is thinking, or your parents or your coach or other climbers around you are thinking. Sometimes it's feelings of jealousy, and that's something that can be an issue as well. Other times it's maybe just spending time afterwards ruminating or second guessing. What did I say? What did I do during that session? And kind of replaying it in your mind and wondering, oh, did I say the right thing? Did I do something stupid? How did I come over in some way? And the other thing then is maybe about feeling judged on how well you climb as a person, as well as just as a climber. So this idea that, we sometimes confuse, I'm a good climber, and to be a good person, I have to be a good climber. To be accepted in my group, I have to be a good climber. So I think those are some of the really common fears and worries. And I think for those ones, that's where some of the CBT techniques can be really, really useful. So those techniques, if you're not familiar, would be things like thought challenging. It would be looking for evidence for and against those thoughts. It would be, I guess, looking for what we call thinking errors. So am I thinking in very black and white terms? Am I thinking in very overgeneralized terms? Is this kind of fantasy magical thinking, imagining what people are thinking about? So trying to identify maybe some thinking errors there. It might be trying to come up with alternative thoughts. And I suppose it's really important to understand that the goal of CBT is not to think positively. Okay, so it's not to turn a negative thought into a positive one. That's not it at all. What it's more about is trying to introduce some doubt to some of the ideas and thoughts that you have. Okay, so if my thought is, if I climb badly here, everyone will think I'm useless, then what I would be trying to do is not convince myself of the opposite, but more I'd be looking for evidence that maybe a different view was also valid, that actually people don't really notice what I'm doing when I'm climbing because they're too busy doing what they're doing. They're too busy climbing themselves. Okay, so that is the idea behind that, is to introduce a bit of doubt, this idea that people are going to think badly of me if I don't climb well. One of the other things you can do is to do something called the downward arrow technique, which is where you kind of keep asking yourself, what's so bad about that? What's the worst thing about that? So that example, people think I'm useless if I don't climb well. Well, what would be so bad about that? Well, they might not like me. And what would be so bad about that? Well, they wouldn't want to spend time with me. And what's so bad about people not wanting to spend time with you? Then I guess I'd be lonely and just on my own the whole time. Okay, so what we're trying to do is unpick some of those things and see what the worst fear is there. But I think it also gives a really nice clue as to what's important to us. So what's important is to be accepted by a group and to have friends, or to have kind of climbing buddies to hang out with. Okay. Again, the idea with some of those beliefs that maybe you have to be good at something in order to be liked, which is that underlying belief behind some of those thought patterns that I've just indicated. We might want to introduce some doubt to that idea as well. So do you have to be good at stuff to be liked? Or, do you know anyone, for example, who's really terrible at something but people still like them? So the idea here is that we're trying to just shift a little bit on those very firm beliefs that we have. We're trying to undermine them in some way, introduce doubt to those concepts. Okay, so after going through that downward arrow technique, I'm thinking, well, actually, I know Alan, and Alan is pretty terrible at I don't know, at cooking, for example, but I still like him. He's a nice guy. All right, so we're trying to undermine that idea that you have to be good at something in order to be well liked. That's just a few examples for you. Like I said, there's a whole chapter in the book about the social side of climbing. Here it is. It's out today, published by Sequoia Books, and you can find it on their website, and I think also other online retailers. Loads of different chapters in here. So there's a whole section on what psychological skills you need for climbing, how to set realistic and appropriate goals, how to change your behavior so you can stick to a training plan, how to fix common problems in your climbing. That's mostly a whole section there on anxiety. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 chapters basically on different types of anxiety in climbing. And I think that's probably the most attention that anxiety in climbing has had ever in a book. So I'm really pleased with that, because there's lots of useful advice in there and exercises for you to work through yourselves. Then there's a section on how to finesse your mental skills, and I cover other types of mental skills. They're more common in sports psychology, like climbing confidently, focusing, imagery, visualization, and sort of being creative in your movement and problem solving. And then finally, there's a section on well-being and talking about kind of how gratitude is really important as well in terms of our own personal well-being. So lots of different things in there. I've written this book directly aimed at ordinary climbers, people like me, people who enjoy climbing, don't necessarily climb very hard, don't necessarily follow a, I don't know, a fingerboarding program or whatever. I think there's something in there for everyone, whatever your level, and lots of practical advice. So it's based on psychological research, but what I've done is adapt that stuff so that you have exercises that are directly relevant to climbing in there. Okay, hope that was helpful, and hope you enjoy reading the book.